Expand your mind and enrich your world. It's time for another outstanding podcast from ICRT.
It came as a bit of a shock to many when a couple of weeks ago, the prestigious World Whiskies Awards granted the title of Best Single Malt to a whiskey produced right here in Taiwan. The whiskey in question comes from the Kavalan distillery in Yilan County, and making the feat all the more impressive is the fact that when the distillery went into operation just a decade ago, it was the only whiskey producer on the island. So how did Taiwan go from no whiskey production to developing the world's top whiskey in just 10 years? Well, to answer that question, I spoke with the distillery's blender, Chang, and to start our conversation, he took me all the way back to the first batch they ever produced, which in whiskey years wasn't all that long ago.
Our very first drop of the new make spirit was distilled on the 11th of March, 2006 at precisely 3:30 p.m. And that was a very historical moment, not just for Kavalan Distillery, but at that time it was also a very historical moment for Taiwan as well, because at that time we were the one and only distillery in Taiwan. So this year, 2015, this is our 10th year in operation since the construction of the distillery started.
And how early into the process did you start to feel like maybe you had something special here, maybe you had a world-class whiskey?
Right. I joined the distillery right from 2005. And at that time, to be honest, we were a bit worried, if we can really produce quality whiskey in Taiwan, because we know that Taiwan is in a subtropical climate, which is quite hot. But after about three or 4 years, when we started to monitor the quality of the spirit during maturation, we realized that actually the heat of Taiwan speeds up the maturation process and make it go faster. At the same time, because in Yilan, we have the cold air coming from Siberia every winter, and that will bring the cold wind and also plenty of rainfalls, which also helps in wintertime for the oxidation process of the maturation. And with the combination of the two, we realize that actually Taiwan is a very good country, with a perfect climate, especially in Yilan, for whiskey production. And that's when we were very excited and also very happy and very pleased with the way, the maturation quality goes.
Now, King Car, the food and beverage company that your distillery is a part of, King Car has been around forever in Taiwan. But as you say, your distillery was only formed relatively recently. Is that because of the state monopoly on liquor sales that existed in Taiwan up until the early 2000s?
That's right, Mr. Lee, who is the owner. Mr. Lee Sr., who is nearly 80 years old this year, actually he told us every time that when he was a young man, right about 40 years ago, he wanted to have his own distillery, but he couldn't do so. He couldn't have done so because at that time we have this monopoly system in Taiwan. Only until 2002, when Taiwan joined WTO officially, that's when the government was, I would say, forced to open up the regulation. And that's why we have the opportunity to have our own private distilleries, breweries, and wineries, and so on. And that's why Mr. Lee wasted no time. He sent us to Scotland, to Canada, to gather all the data and information. So starting from 2002 up until April 2005, that was the, I call it the data gathering period of Kavalan. But apparently, we know that TTL, which is a state-owned distillery, they are going to produce their own single malt whiskey now. So we are no longer the one and only, but back then that was the case.
And yeah, so I think what a lot of people are wondering is How did you manage to develop it so quickly, since there wasn't any kind of a tradition in Taiwan of whiskey brewing? How is it possible that, this company, you guys started this in 2005, here we are only 10 years later, and, it's being recognized as the best whiskey in the world? Do you have any thoughts on how that came to develop so fast?
As mentioned just now, because of the heat of Taiwan, that actually speeds up the maturation process. But number two, I would say that because King Car Company has always been very famous for, quality. So that's why we work very hard to make sure that we have the right quality, for the spirit. But number three, I would say that because we are also very lucky to have invited a gentleman from Scotland to be our consultant. His name is Dr. Jim Swan. I would say that he is the mentor in the early days. He was the person who taught us how to produce quality whiskey, in the heat of Taiwan, plus our own hard work, and plus the weather. These three all combined together, I think that's the key to Kavalan's quality spirit.
Now, I've read that you aged this whiskey in oak barrels that had actually previously been used for wine. Can you talk a little bit about why you chose to do that, and whether or not anybody else is doing this, or if this is kind of an original technique?
Right, because to be honest, it was a beautiful accident, because at that time we were having trouble, sourcing our oak barrels. And Dr. Jim Swan, the consultant, my mentor, he suggested to us, there are plenty of wine casks that are not being used for the maturation of whiskey. And since we couldn't find much oak barrels from the whiskey industry, we thought it's an opportunity to look for, oak barrels from other, industries, say, wine industry. So we bought a lot of wine casks back then. But the thing is, once you buy your wine cask, it's very important that you cannot put your new make spirit into the cask straight away, because the acidity in the cask will actually spoil the taste of the whiskey after the end of maturation if you don't do anything to it. So what we do is, this is also something that we have done, something we have pioneered. The first distillery in the world to do so is that together with Jim Swan, we shave the internal surface of the oak barrels in order to get rid of these unwanted acidities from wines. And then by maintaining all the good stuff, we do our second stage of toasting process. And at this, at the toasting process, we manage to fuse and also create all the new flavors, all the new congeners in the wood. And then for the final stage, we rechar the internal surface to secure all these very nice flavors formed for them to interact with our spirit. So by the end of the maturation, we can have this very nice, very creamy, smooth and mellow, fruity spirit. And I would say that that's the main reason why this time the product has been awarded the world's best single malt in the world.
Now, I want to ask about the location of your distillery, because I think when most people think about whiskey, they think about Scotland, and Yilan does not have a lot in common with Scotland in terms of its climate. So how was Yilan chosen as the location for this distillery? Does your company have any kind of roots in there? What's the connection?
That's right. Basically, because the plant where the distillery is located, it was opened in 1996 when we first started our mineral water or natural water production. And the reason, also for the reason why we set up our distillery here is because in Yilan, it's primarily industrial free. That's why the air, the water, everything here is very clean and pure. So it was mainly for the water and also the very good environment that we chose the location for the distillery. And the name Kavalan that is actually the old name for County Yilan. About, I was told, 100 years ago, when the indigenous tribe of Kavalan, they used to stay here. But these days, apparently, they all moved to Hualien area now. But that's the main reason for the location and also for the name of the distillery.
Before the interview, we were talking a little bit, and you're being pretty modest, but you were pretty central to the development of this flavor and this brand. What can you say about what's gotten you interested in whiskey and how this has been something that you've been focusing on for so long? Why is this something that you wanted to work on?
Okay, basically, I would say that it's all to do with personal interest and also passion. Because when I was studying in the UK, every summer we used to rent a car and drove all the way up to Scotland with our, with the students also came from Taiwan, and we all share the same interest. That is, whiskey culture, I would say, and that's why ever since I was a student in the UK, I have always been very interested in how they produced the so-called water of life, right from the solid malted barley. It has always been very interesting to me. And when I came back to Taiwan, because at that time when my father had a very bad stroke, being the elder son in the family, when I came back to look after my father, I didn't really know what to do back then. So when I was searching for a job on the internet, I saw from the 104 website that King Car Company was looking for someone to be, at that time it wasn't called a blender, it was called the Research Fellow, Spirits Research Fellow. So I sent my CV, and they asked me to come in for interview, and I was very lucky that I had passed all the tests on my nose, and to be honest, I was very happy about that. And ever since I joined the company, plus they sent me to Scotland to learn all the skills and all the knowledge, plus the passion that I have always had. So I think that's the best driving force for me to keep going until today.
Now, when you started off on this process of putting together this distillery and deciding exactly how are you going to approach this problem of making whiskey in Taiwan, would you say, I know that you had this consultant from Scotland who was giving you some advice,
right.
but would you say that you based any of your methods or you took any inspiration from other whiskeys in the world, or would you say it really was a matter of figuring out everything for Taiwan?
That's right. I would say that is the latter, the second case that you mentioned, because right from the very beginning, we don't try to mimic or try to copy any other whiskey in terms of style or taste. Mr. Lee, Senior, he has always emphasized to us that he wants to have a real Taiwanese whiskey that represents Taiwan, and that's why right from the beginning, together with Jim Swan, we always make sure that the whiskey is produced the right way. It's the traditional way, but it's the right way, which means that according to the local climate, the humidity, the temperature, we do some adjustment to it. And in the end, I think we have managed to produce something that is truly unique to Taiwan in terms of flavor, quality, and so on, which I think is very important. It's the identity of Kavalan as well.
We've been speaking to Ian Chang, the blender of Kavalan Distillery in Yilan County. Ian, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Keith. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
That's it for the show today. As always, we'd love to hear what you thought of the program. You can leave us a comment on our Facebook page or rate and review Taiwan Talk on iTunes. Also, a reminder to listeners to tune into Taiwan This Week every Friday night at 8:30 to catch our new weekly news review show. Each episode, the ICRT news crew discusses the week's biggest news stories to dig a little bit deeper than we have time for in the 5-minute newscasts. Catch the broadcast or find it online at the ICRT website and on iTunes. Thanks for listening. For ICRT, I'm Keith Manconi.